Howdy, folks, and a big howdy to all our listeners down in the Lone Star State.
You bet.
Especially if you're behind the wheel or, wearing a badge. Today's deep dive is tailored just for y'all.
Absolutely.
All right, so have y'all ever wondered what happens when a police officer tries to pull you over, but you're already pulling into your driveway?
Yeah.
Can they still stop you? What are your rights?
Right.
We've dug deep into Texas law and legal precedents to bring you the most important takeaways.
Looking forward to it.
And trust me, you might be surprised to learn that pulling into your driveway doesn't automatically protect you from a traffic stop in Texas.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a little bit like this.
Okay.
Imagine a baseball player hitting a home run.
Okay.
They cross home plate. That's like your driveway.
Yeah.
It's safe.
Yeah.
But the play started on the field, right?
Yeah.
That's the public road. So the rules of the game still apply.
I like that analogy.
But let's break it down.
Sure.
You're driving down the road in Texas, see those flashing lights,
Oh,
and you think, made it to my driveway just in time.
Happens all the time, right?
Am I in the clear?
Well, not necessarily. The key here is where the alleged violation occurred. If an officer observes a traffic violation on a public road, like speeding or running a red light, they absolutely have the legal authority to initiate a stop.
Okay.
And that authority doesn't just disappear because you pull onto your property.
So even if my tires hit my driveway, they can still proceed with the stop.
That's right.
Wow.
It's really about ensuring that actions on public roads have consequences regardless of where the driver ultimately stops.
I see.
To kind of put this into perspective, let's imagine a scenario.
Okay.
Someone commits a robbery and then runs into their house.
Okay.
We wouldn't say the police can't pursue them just because they crossed a threshold, would we?
I guess not. No.
The same principle applies here.
Okay, that makes sense. But hold on a second. My driveway is my private property.
Of course.
Don't I have certain rights there?
Absolutely. You do. Your driveway is actually part of what's legally called the curtilage of your home.
Curtilage.
Yeah, it's a fancy legal term, but it basically means the area immediately surrounding your home.
Okay.
And it's generally afforded some protection under the Fourth Amendment.
Huh?
However, when it comes to a traffic stop that originated on a public road, that protection is limited.
So it's not a free pass.
Not in this case.
Yeah.
In these situations, the officer is allowed onto your property to complete the stop.
Yeah.
They have to be able to enforce the law.
Okay, so they can't just use the traffic stop as an excuse to search my car or my house.
Precisely. Their actions have to be directly related to the initial violation. They can't just start searching your vehicle or home without a warrant or probable cause beyond the traffic violation itself.
Okay.
Unless, of course, there are exigent circumstances.
Exigent circumstances. Now, what in the world does that mean?
So think of a situation where the officer, while approaching your vehicle, clearly sees illegal drugs in plain view on your passenger seat. That's an example where they might have a legitimate reason to take further action beyond the initial traffic stop.
I see. So it's about them having a clear and immediate justification, not just a hunch.
Exactly. The plain view doctrine. It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
But essentially it means if an officer can see evidence of criminal activity without having to search, that can give them probable cause to investigate further.
Got it.
Makes sense.
All right. Now let's flip the script for a second and think about this from the driver's perspective.
Okay.
Say you're driving down a dark Texas road at night and you just don't feel safe stopping right away.
Yeah. That's a valid concern, especially in some parts of Texas.
Yeah. What should you do?
Well, if you find yourself in that situation, communication is key.
Okay.
Turn on your hazard lights, slow down, and signal to the officer that you're looking for a safe, well-lit place to pull over.
So acknowledge the officer, but make it clear you're not trying to evade them.
Right. Pulling into your driveway, if that's the nearest safe spot, can be an option.
Okay.
Once stopped, though, stay in your vehicle with your hands visible.
Okay.
This helps de-escalate the situation and makes the interaction smoother for everyone involved.
All right. Starting to get how this all works, but I'm sure some folks out there listening are thinking, what if I just flat out refuse to stop?
Yeah. Well, that's where things can take a turn for the worse.
Okay.
While you absolutely have the right to remain silent and refuse a search without a warrant, evading, or actively resisting the officer is a completely different story.
So if you slam on the gas and try to make a run for it into the garage, that's not going to end well.
Definitely not. That could be seen as evading arrest. And trust me, you don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, no thanks.
It's always best to cooperate with lawful requests and address any concerns through the proper legal channels afterward.
All right, so we talked about the officer's perspective, the driver's perspective.
Uh-huh.
Let's pause here for a moment and kind of digest what we've learned so far.
Okay.
It seems like pulling into your Texas driveway doesn't give you complete immunity from a traffic stop,
He doesn't.
especially if the officer witnessed the violation while you were still on a public road.
That's right. That's the key takeaway here. Public roads, public rules.
And for those of you in law enforcement listening out there, remember that even when a stop extends onto private property, your actions must remain within those legal boundaries.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about that in just a bit.
Yeah.
To really understand how that plays out here in Texas, we should look at some real-life examples.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
There have been tons of cases, both here in the Lone Star State and across the U.S., where courts have upheld this whole thing. The legality of police officers following drivers onto private property to finish traffic stops that started on public roads.
So this isn't just some theoretical legal concept. This
Yeah.
is actually happening in our courts.
Absolutely. And it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, how so?
Well, if pulling onto your property was a guaranteed way to just escape a traffic stop,
Uh-huh.
it would totally undermine the entire system of traffic law enforcement, right?
Right, it would be like saying, sorry, officer, you can't give me that speeding ticket. I'm on my property now.
Exactly. Public safety requires that traffic laws are enforced consistently, regardless of where a driver ends up stopping.
Makes sense. But I bet there's a question on everyone's mind right now.
What's that?
Just because an officer can stop you in your driveway, does that mean they can automatically search your car
Right.
or arrest you?
That's a crucial question, especially here in Texas, where we value our independence and our privacy.
For sure.
And the answer is no.
Okay, good.
Simply being on your property doesn't give an officer the right to search your vehicle or arrest you without a valid legal basis.
So they can't just use the traffic stop as an excuse to start poking around my stuff.
No, they can't. Their actions must be directly related to the initial traffic violation.
Okay.
However, there are some exceptions.
Oh boy, here we go.
For instance, if they see something in plain view that suggests illegal activity, that could give them probable cause to take further action.
Oh, you keep saying plain view.
Yeah.
I'm still a little fuzzy on that whole concept.
Okay, sure. So imagine the officer is walking up to your car and notices a gun on the floorboard,
Uh-huh.
partially hidden under a jacket.
Oh, I see.
That could be a cause for concern, right?
Yeah, definitely.
In that situation, the plain view doctrine would likely apply, giving the officer a legal justification to investigate further.
So the key is that the evidence must be clearly visible without the officer having to search.
Right. They can't just start rummaging through your belongings based on a hunch.
Got it.
There needs to be a legitimate reason to believe that a crime has been committed.
All right, that makes sense.
Mm.
Now let's talk about what happens if a driver refuses to cooperate during a traffic stop.
Okay.
What are the potential consequences, especially here in Texas, where folks tend to be pretty protective of their rights?
Well, refusing to cooperate can escalate the situation quickly and potentially lead to more serious legal trouble.
Okay.
While you do have the right to remain silent and refuse a search without a warrant, actively resisting or attempting to evade the officer is a different story.
So if you try to make a run for it into your house, that's not going to end well.
Not at all. That could be interpreted as evading arrest or obstructing justice, which are separate offenses with potentially harsher penalties than the initial traffic violation.
I bet Texas law enforcement officers have seen some pretty creative attempts to avoid a ticket.
Oh, I'm sure they have. But the bottom line is it's always best to cooperate with lawful requests
Okay.
and address any concerns or disagreements through the proper channels afterward.
Uh-huh.
Trying to outsmart or outrun the law rarely works out in anyone's favor.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's recap some key points for our Texas listeners, both those driving and those upholding the law.
Sure. For drivers, remember that pulling into your driveway doesn't give you automatic immunity from a traffic stop, especially if the violation occurred on a public road.
And it's crucial to remember that cooperating with the officer is always the best course of action. Resisting or evading arrest will only make things worse.
And for our Texas law enforcement officers, conducting a driveway stop requires a delicate balance. You have the authority to complete a lawful stop, but your actions must be justified and respectful of the individual's rights.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot between enforcing the law and protecting individual liberties. Right?
Exactly. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
This brings up an interesting question, though.
What's that?
As technology advances and we see more and more surveillance on our roads, how might that impact the concept of a driveway stop? Could we reach a point where any minor traffic violation caught on camera could potentially lead to an interaction on private property?
Yeah, that is a question worth pondering. It really raises some concerns about, the potential erosion of privacy as technology expands its reach into our daily lives.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Where do we draw the line
exactly.
between public safety and individual rights in this increasingly surveilled world?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is heavy stuff to think about.
It is.
But for now, let's bring it back to the here and now.
Okay.
What practical advice can we give our Texas listeners who might find themselves, facing a driveway stop?
Well, for drivers, first and foremost, stay calm.
Yeah.
It's easy to get flustered when you see those lights flashing behind you. But remember, cooperating with the officer is key.
Right. Don't make any sudden moves.
Mm.
Keep your hands visible and answer their questions honestly. And as we mentioned earlier, you always have the right to remain silent and refuse a search without a warrant.
Exactly. And if you feel like your rights have been violated, the time to address those concerns is afterward, through the proper legal channels.
Yeah.
Don't try to argue your case on the side of the road.
Don't get into it on the side of the road.
Right.
Okay, so stay calm, cooperate, and know your rights.
Got it. What about our Texas law enforcement officers?
Yeah.
Any tips for handling these situations?
Well, for officers, conducting a driveway stop requires a delicate touch.
Hmm.
You're stepping onto someone's property,
Right.
a place where they expect a certain level of privacy and security. Your actions should always be justified, respectful, and within the boundaries of the law.
It's about striking that balance
Yes.
between enforcing the law and respecting individual rights. Precisely. Approach the situation, calmly explain your actions clearly, and treat the driver with courtesy. Building trust and understanding can go a long way in these situations.
It really can. Well, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
and it seems like pulling into your Texas driveway isn't quite the get-out-of-jail-free card some might think it is.
That's right. But it's also important to remember that your driveway doesn't automatically become a free-for-all for law enforcement. There are clear legal boundaries, and both drivers and officers need to understand them.
Absolutely. So to sum it all up for our Texas listeners, whether you're behind the wheel or wearing the badge, know your rights, understand the law, and remember that a little bit of courtesy and common sense can go a long way in making these situations smoother for everyone involved.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this deep dive into driveway stops in Texas.
It's been a pleasure.
Stay safe out there, Texas, and we'll catch you next time.